So are we on? Yes.
Sayın hocalarım, değerli katılımcılar, Nizamiye Medreselerinden Günümüze, İslam Dünyasında Felsefe ve Kelam Uluslararası Sempozyumu'nun 3. gününde tekrar bir aradayız. Hoş geldiniz. Programa 9. oturum ile başlıyoruz. Bu oturumun başkanlığını Vasim El-Reyes yapacaktır. Oturumun konuşmacıları Joseph Lumbard, Karen Talieferro, Taneli Kukan'ın hocalarımız çevrimiçi olarak katılacaktır toplantıya. Doçent Doktor Tuna Tunagöz. Buyurunuz hocam, başlayabiliriz.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome all. I'm an emergency chair, so please bear with me. So we have 4 speakers. Each speaker will have 15 minutes. Because of Zoom, I'll give 3 minutes warning just to remind you that the 15 minutes is about to end. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to give biography, so I'll just introduce the speakers and we can start. So our first speaker is Dr. Joseph Lumbard.
All right, thank you very much. In my abstract for this paper, I spoke about discussing the link between metaphysics, philosophy, and the Quran, and the way in which you have the connection between ontology and epistemology within both the philosophical, theological tradition and within the Quran, and the relation between the two. Now, as often happens when one conceptualizes a project, the reality is far bigger than the initial conceptualization. So for this project, I found that I couldn't fully address this nexus between ontology and epistemology within the Quran and the manner in which this unfolds or is interacted with, and the interaction with the philosophical, theological, metaphysical traditions, without first addressing the Quranic understanding of vicegerency, khilafah, and the manner in which this unfolds in the philosophical, theological, and metaphysical traditions of Islam. There's really a deep connection, as they see, between what we call the mithaq, or ahd, the covenant, the fitra, the amana, the trust given to mankind, and the khilafah, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, the vicegerency of the human being. So in many ways, the paper that I'm giving now is in some ways appropriate to the presentation I had envisaged giving. For in truth, in some ways, we could say that we can't fully define what a thing is knowledge until we are able to define the bearer of knowledge and the purpose of that knowledge. And as such, an anthropology of sorts is in many ways connected to an epistemology. Now, as everyone here knows, when we speak of an Islamic anthropology, one that is grounded in Quran and Hadith, and they're unfolding in the interpretive traditions, most discussions begin with the creation of Adam, which is not just a creation story, but also, so we see what we could call an education story, as in Surah Al-Baqarah, when it says, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I am placing, God says to the angels, I'm placing a vicegerent therein. And they say, Ataj'alu fiha may yufsidu fiha wa yasbiqu ad-dama wa nahnu nusabbihu bihamdika wa nuqaddisu lak. Will you place therein one who works corruption and sheds blood while we hymn your praise and call you holy? And God responds, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Verily, I know that which you know not. Then, of course, followed by, he taught Adam the names, all of them. Now, what is meant by the use of the word Khalifa in this passage and the discussion of Dawood or David being appointed Khalifa in Quran 38:26, and what is the function of Khalifa is in many ways, for many commentators, central to the question of what it is to be a human being, and the question of what is meant by taught Adam the names, all of them, is central to the question of what it is to know. In his discussion of this passage in Anwar Tanzil wa Ahrar Ta'wil, The Lights of Revelation, The Secrets of Interpretation, al-Baydawi, who I think we could say is perhaps the most widely read commentator of the classical period, employs terms from the peripatetic tradition to elucidate the meaning of the term Khalifa and the significance of this exchange. He writes, this is a long passage, he writes, but I think very important for understanding this overall vision of Khalifa in the classical period, even within the Kalam tradition. He says, it's as if they, the angels, knew that the one appointed Khalifa possessed three faculties that define him. The appetitive faculty, shahawiyya, the wrathful ghadabiyya, both drawing him towards corruption and bloodshed, and the rational or intellectual faculty, aqliyya, drawing him towards ma'rifah and obedience. Looking at each faculty in isolation, the angels said, what is the wisdom in making him Khalifa? When with regard to those two faculties, wisdom, hikmah, does not dictate that he should even be created, not to mention made Khalifa. As for the intellectual faculty or rational faculty, we ourselves can accomplish what is expected of it, free and clear of the impediments of these failings. And that's the end of what he says, the angels say. And then he continues, but they overlooked the merit of each of those two faculties when they become refined, muhaddaba. And I think it's important that he's using this because that kind of links it back to the idea of tahdib al-ahlaq of Ibn Nisqawayh. So docile to the intellect, trained for goodness, such as al-iffa, continence, courage, al-shuja'ah, struggle against desire, and justice. Of course, the four noble virtues. They did not know that composition affords what the faculties in isolation do not, such as encompassing particulars, the devising of industries, and bringing the resources of created matter, min al-quwwa, from potentiality into actuality, which is the very purpose of the appointment to Khalifa. And God alludes to this when saying, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Verily, I know that which you do not. So we see here that for al-Baydawi, Khilafa, vicegerency, is divined by the ability of the human intellect to bring the created world from potentiality to actuality. Discussing God's teaching Adam the names in the following verse, al-Baydawi then writes, the meaning is that he, Most High, created him out of various parts and distinct faculties, ready, musta'idda, to perceive all kinds of perceptibles, madrukat, the intelligible, al-ma'qulat, the sensory, al-mahsusat, the imaginal, al-mutakhayyalat, and the estimative, al-mawhumat. And he inspired in him recognition of the essence of things, ma'rifat dhawat al-ashya', their properties and names, the principles of knowledge, the canons of human crafts, and the modalities of their implements. So this interpretation is clearly grounded in understanding that the angels, or most angels in al-Baydawi's, and this is clearly a debated topic among the scholars, but are not capable of disobeying God's command. As in Surah Al-Nahl, they fear their Lord above them and they do whatsoever they are commanded. And Surah Al-Tahrim, which describes the angels as those who do not disobey God in what he commands of them and who do what they are commanded. So as such, the angels could not fathom the purpose of creating a being who had the capacity to disobey. But as we see in al-Baydawi's discussion, the very capacity to disobey is perceived as being connected to the human being's ability to engage all of the particulars. Being able to fully engage the particulars, the human being is able to perceive them in accord with the universal intelligibles, al-maqulat, and then to arrange them in accord with them. Of course, this being very much the peripatetic Neoplatonic model of the human being organizing things in accord through the Four Noble Virtues and all the subsequent virtues after that. So in other words, the human being could not fulfill the function of khilafa if he did not have the ability to be the bridge between what is below and what is above, and thus to organize and order what is below in accord with that which is above. In this discussion, al-Baydawi identifies vicegerency with the trust, or the amana, in a clear link to verse 72 of Surah Al-Ahzab. Truly we offered the trust unto the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to bear it and were weary of it. Yet man bore it, the amana. Truly he was wrongdoing, ignorant. Indeed, al-Baydawi addresses the connection again in his commentary on this verse, but does not make the link to vicegerency, only addressing the appointments of the intellect for controlling the appetitive and wrathful potentialities of the human being. Now, a stronger connection is made by Alauddin al-Khazarani in his Sharh of Adud ad-Din al-Iji's Ethics, al-Akhlaq al-Adudiyya. Here, al-Khazarani writes, the wisdom in bringing into existence the human being, who is the encapsulation of all existence, al-makhluqat, is divine vicegerency, as is clearly expressed by the tenor of this noble verse, Inni ja'ilun fil ard khalifa. I am appointing on earth a vicegerent, and is moreover the import of truly we offered the trust unto the heavens and the earth and the mountains. So what is meant by the trust, al-amana, is al-khilafa al-ilahiyya, the divine vicegerency. The context of the verses indicates that man being selected for bearing it cannot be just bearing the intellect or taklif, as in some commentaries, because angels and jinns share with man in having intellect, and jinn share with him in taklif. So his bearing the trust must pertain to vicegerency. As such, his being entitled to vicegerency is due to the perfect receptivity of his nature, of the human nature, to opposite attributes, such that he is able to be a locus mazhar in which manifest the opposing divine names and to accomplish the habitation, cultivation, and construction of both the outward and spiritual worlds. Now, as we see here, in the sense that what Khazarani is doing is he's taking the approach that you had with al-Baydawi, but he's casting it more in an Akbarian frame by discussing the divine names. So, in concluding his discussion of vicegerency, Khazarani writes, know that the realization of vicegerency is through wisdom, which is bringing the soul, a nafs, to its full possibilities in al-ilm wal-amal, knowledge and action. And it is said that wisdom is knowledge of the states of existent things. It follows that vicegerency is not realized except through two things. One of them is wisdom, which is the perfection and completion of knowledge, and the other is al-qudra al-fadila, all right, the virtuous, the noble ability, which is al-kamal, perfection. So in both al-Baydawi and al-Khazarani, we see that the manner in which the role of being a vicegerent is firmly grounded in the human being's capacity for knowledge, and thus in the intellect, according to al-Baydawi, or vicegerency, which incorporates and transcends the intellect, as in al-Khazarani. As Abu Hamid al-Ghazali says of the intellect in the Book of Knowledge of the Ihya, the intellect is the noblest attribute the human being possesses, since through it one agrees to take on God's trust, and by it one achieves proximity to God. The manner in which this capacity to take on the trust of vicegerency functions as a bridge between the angelic realm and the lower realm is addressed by Al-Ghazali in Mishkat al-Anwar, the Niche of Lights, where he writes, as for the suprasensory rational lights, the higher world is filled with them. They are the substances of the angels. The lower world is also filled with them. They are the animal life and human life. Through the low human light, the proper order of the world of lowness becomes manifest, just as through the angelic light, the proper order of the world of highness becomes manifest. This is what God means by his words. He brought you forth from the earth and settled you therein. And now in the next ones, he links it to Khilafah again. And God has said, he will surely make them khulafa fil ard, vicegerents upon the earth. And he said, and he makes you vicegerents upon the earth. And again, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I am appointing you on earth a vicegerent, or I'm appointing on earth a vicegerent. So now how am I on time right now?
You can have a couple of more minutes if you want, 5.
All right, good. So, as is clear from the manner in which al-Baydawi, al-Khazarani, and al-Ghazali conceptualize this function of vicegerency, knowledge is the central aspect. Through his God-given rational or intellective faculty, al-Aql, the human being not only knows, but also orders the world, or, in al-Ghazali's phrasing in the Mishkat, orders the lower lights in accord with the higher lights. The created world is indeed an intelligible reality. It must, however, be understood in accord with the higher realities that determine it. Now, in iterations of the later tradition, it is this function of vicegerency both to God and also, they say, to God's messenger. And here we could see it more as, you could say, a successor vicegerent. I mean, you can combine, because there's a debate as to how we translate that. That is seen as binding together all the fields of knowledge. Now, there's a beautiful quote, and since this is in Turkey, I thought I'd take this from Borsawi, where he writes about this in commenting on the idea that the light, that the Prophet ﷺ is a siraj munir, a luminous lamp. And I'll end with this. He writes, the one lamp lights 1,000 lamps, yet none of its light is diminished. The people of the outward sciences, as of witnessing, the people of witnessing, a shahud, have agreed that God created all things from the Muhammadan light. Yet nothing of his light is diminished. Likewise, the sciences of the Sharia, the benefits of the path, the lights of recognition, the secrets of the truth have manifest within the scholars of his community. Yet they remain as they are in him, peace be upon him. Do you not see that the light of the moon derives from the light of the sun, yet the light of the sun remains as it is? That is, our Master Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the sun from God's grace that rose over the worlds, and the prophets are its moons, manifesting the lights derived from it, which are the sciences and the rulings in the world of witnessing when it is absent. So in other words, all of the various sciences and all of the ulama are seen as degrees of being both having khilafah in relation to Allah and as having khilafah in relation to the Prophet Muhammad and all fields of knowledge. And there are other ways in which he details all the various fields of knowledge and the roles that different scholars play are ways in which we bring that which is in potentiality into actuality within this world and within the breasts of human beings. So I'll end there. There's much more to say, but our time is limited.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to, I'm sorry, I was rushed in the beginning. I didn't properly introduce Professor Lumbard. He's
That's okay.
An associate professor of Islamic Studies in the College of Islamic Studies at Hamid bin Khalifa University in Qatar and a general editor of the study of Quran, Harper's One. The title of the paper was Being and Knowledge in the Quran, Metaphysics as an Unfolding of the Quranic Paradigm. And thank you, Doctor, for your patience. I have a little announcement. Our third speaker, Dr. Tanali, is unfortunately will not be able to make it. He is he's sick with COVID, so we wish him quick recovery. So I decided that I could give each speaker a little bit more time. If we can finish earlier, would be better, so that we have the question and answer. Sorry? Oh, yeah. So, no, we're finished now, and we have the questions, so we will definitely. Our second speaker is Dr. Karen Talieferro. She's an associate professor of humanities at the Hamilton Center at the University of Florida. Her paper is Islam and Natural Law, a Tradition in Development. And again, it's 20 minutes. I'll give a maybe 3 minutes warning. If we can finish early, that would be good, so that we have questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to, I suppose it's now IPSA, to the organizers, to everyone for being here, and my sincere regrets that I wasn't able to join. If at all I could have, I certainly would love to have been there. And hello, Wasim, it's good to see you. All right, well, to the chase then. It's a question of some contention as to whether Islam has a natural law tradition. That's the topic of this paper. There's certainly no self-conscious tradition of anything referred to as natural law within either classical Islamic philosophy or usul al-fiqh, Islam's jurisprudential tradition. Instead, strictly speaking, Sharia is divine law, and neither Islamic jurists nor philosophers have attempted to theorize a distinct lex naturalis, a distinct natural law. But of course, this isn't the full picture. This paper provides an overview, or sort of a sweeping overview, of various strains of Islamic thought that I believe are suggestive of a natural law tradition within three principal disciplines or areas. First, in fiqh, in usul al-fiqh. I'm going to discuss really Enver Iman's study of natural law within the jurisprudential tradition. Also within fiqh, I study the juristic tool of istihsan, so juristic preference, sometimes called equity, as well as a bit on the maqasid al-sharia, tradition of thought. Then in the second field, which is theology, I probably am going to skip over this for the sake of time, but it's in the longer paper. I discuss natural law as and its relationship to fitra, the innate moral disposition of all humans. And then the third domain is in Felsefa. I discuss natural law as Aristotelian teleological thinking. A lot of this covers contemporary thinkers, which is a bit of a departure for me, but it's something of a sweeping overview and a starting point for thinking a bit more deeply about natural law within Islam. So firstly, within fiqh, the first section is on reason as a source of law and whether reason could ever be a source of Islamic law. So a pivotal question of this inquiry is the rather fraught question of whether reason can possibly be an independent source of Islamic law. Orthodox Sunni belief limits the material sources of divine law to the Quran and Sunnah, to which are added the procedural sources of ijma', the consensus of jurists, and qiyas, which is juristic analogy. To allow human reason itself to have authority opens one to the charge of simply secularizing Islamic law, allowing the jurist to use his own sense of right and wrong, as opposed to God's. Enver Iman's seminal 2010 book, Islamic Natural Law Theories, addresses this very issue, and he focuses there on questions in pre-modern Islamic jurisprudence for which no source text existed. Iman identifies several pre-modern jurists who he argues, and this is, quote, recognized to a certain extent that reason must have ontological authority for Sharia purposes, i.e. reason is an independent source of law. He identifies this as hard natural law, he calls it, and locates it within the works of Al-Jassas, Abdul-Jabbar, and Abul-Basri. Hard natural law, as he calls it, to Iman. He also has soft natural law, which is distinct and I think is not really natural law, or it is difficult to qualify as such. Hard natural law to Iman is effectively the belief that good is the good is located within nature itself. He writes, one could rationally deduce the good from nature, i.e. from nature alone, without revelation, and transform that finding into a normative Sharia value, since the empirical goodness of nature embodies the purposeful intent of God, end quote. This belief in the goodness of nature flows from the belief that God only does good and is incapable of any evil, but also from the conclusion that God must have created the world for the benefit of people, since he wouldn't have created it without purpose, nor without benefit, as this would not befit his nature. Similarly, in Iman's reading of Abdul-Jabbar's notion of lutf, kindness or benevolence, there are, and this is a quote, God-given human dispositional traits or motivations that propel us toward the good and keep us away from evil. These are innate. Again, it's somewhat related to fitra, but distinct. And this, for Jabbar, was sufficient to render reason, in Iman's reading, was sufficient to render reason as an authoritative source of Sharia. Now, this account of hard natural law, I think it bears a clear resemblance to, and it's not the same thing, but resemblance to the Thomistic tradition of natural law in the West, as articulated in the Summa Theologica. To Thomas, natural law is the rational creature's participation in the eternal law, where the eternal law is God's eternal divine wisdom for all of creation. So in both cases, you are sort of accessing the divine law has a different valence for Thomas, but in both cases, in one way or another, you're accessing the divine law, but through reason. And for Iman's reading, through reason alone. For Iman, reason can serve not only as an aid in understanding Sharia, but also can be independent of it. As natural law, just as for Thomas, reason can access the natural law independently from any knowledge of divine law. However, there may be difficulties in developing an Islamic natural law along Thomistic lines. In her 2021 article, An Islamic Notion of Natural Law on Teleological Natural Law Thinking in Usul al-Fiqh, it's an excellent article, Rijke Sinder rejects Iman's Islamic natural law because she says, this kind of a natural law is functioning as an external rational standard against which the divine law is measured, which she finds ultimately is un-Islamic. And I think she's largely correct on this point, and I'm going to return to Sinder's alternative approach to natural law later. Still, natural law and Islamic jurisprudence needn't confine itself to this kind of a model in which reason is an independent source of Sharia values. There are other juristic tools, including istihsan. Istihsan is a long-standing, if somewhat controversial, jurisprudential practice that allows the jurist a measure of preference or judgment of his own approval, which is one of the term's literal meanings, in deciding a moral question. The objective is to permit a jurist to take the larger picture into account in the pursuit of overall justice, while still remaining faithful to the broader jurisprudential tradition and textual sources. As a device that permits the jurist to use natural reason in pursuit of the same ends of the higher, i.e. divine law, istihsan could therefore be possibly understood as a form of natural law. Now, the principal extant classical source on istihsan is Ibn Taymiyyah's Qaida fil Istihsan, full consideration of which is far beyond our 20 minutes here. So I'm going to just focus on one of the understandings of istihsan that has come down to us from that Qaida fil Istihsan, which is istihsan as a specification of the ratio legis, of the takhsis al-illa, a sort of specifying of the legal rationale for the ruling. So from this understanding of istihsan, because there are others in which istihsan is sort of a replacement of one qiyas or legal analogy for another. There are other understandings, but this one is the most, in a sense, it's the most daring, I think. It's not simply moving from one analogy to another and keeping the same ruling, but rather considering the overall legal rationale. From this, contemporary thinkers have found something that I think resembles natural law. For instance, Muhammad Kamali offers a distinct understanding of istihsan as, quote, a method of exercising for the jurist, of exercising personal opinion in order to avoid any rigidity and unfairness that might result from the literal enforcement of the existing law, end quote. As an example of this practice of istihsan, he invokes Umar ibn al-Khattab's decision not to enforce the head penalty for theft, amputation of the hand, during a famine. So, in other words, even though Ibn al-Khattab did set aside existing divine law, he did so to uphold public interest and equity and justice, and therefore this is, to Kamali, an instance of istihsan, and it looks a lot like what some will consider to be natural law. This move changes istihsan subtly, but I think substantially, because it represents not analogical istihsan, i.e. changing the analogy by which you continue the tradition of rulings, but rather moving to a more controversial form of istihsan, istithna'i, an exceptional istihsan. This marks an actual departure from existing law, as distinct from simply different analogical interpretation of it. And so in adopting this definition, Kamali and others are in his camp, places istihsan as a defense against the enforcement of the law for those occasions when the literal interpretations would prove somehow unfair. Of course, we have to ask unfair according to whom or to what. Kamali calls this an antidote to literalism, arguing that it allows the jurist to take a broad view of the law, which must serve but not frustrate the ideals of fairness and justice. At the same time, at least according to Kamali, istihsan, as such, in his understanding of it, does not tend towards an individualist or relativistic conception of justice because it requires that the jurist assume that right and wrong still derive from, quote, an eternally valid standard that is ultimately independent of human cognizance and adherence. It's beyond the confines here, but perhaps unsurprising that istihsan, even the less controversial forms of it, are not universally accepted within Islamic legal theory. So this is one sort of resemblance of natural law within the fiqh tradition, which actually it also resembles a version of natural law in the West, new natural law theory, which I'll discuss in just a moment. Still, it's quite controversial, by no means universally accepted. And finally, within fiqh, the maqasid al-sharia, the legal philosophy of maqasid al-sharia also deals with the same problem that natural law theories attempt to solve, which is to say, understanding how to relate divine law with human reason, what role human reason, if at all, plays within either our understanding or even creating what we call divine law. The first formulations of the maqasid are those of al-Ghazali and al-Shatibi. First, for al-Ghazali, the maqasid, the aims of the Sharia, are faith, life, lineage, intellect, and property. And then Shatibi retains these five as the necessary maqasid, but he adds additional categories of needs, hajjiyah, that are not strictly necessary for life, as well as sort of complementary maqasid. And the tradition has a long history, of course, beginning with al-Ghazali, and there's an established contemporary field, even almost a global research industry, concerning the maqasid, to which my chapter can add very little. As it relates to natural law, though, the maqasid al-sharia are evocative of a 20th and 21st century tradition, forgive me, it's early here, of natural law in the West called new natural law theories, developed by Germain Brizet, Joseph Boyle, and others. So both the maqasid and the new natural law theory approaches attempt to use reason to establish the purposes of the law. The maqasid, or in the case of the new natural law, they, instead of saying the aims of the law, they refer to basic human goods, which are considered to be constitutive aspects of genuine human flourishing, including life and health, knowledge and aesthetic experience, skilled work and play, friendship, marriage, harmony with God, harmony among a person's judgments, choices, feelings, and behavior. So you can see in both cases, these are sort of things at which all moral and, in the case of in Islam, divine law would aim. So there's a strong similarity there. But at the same time, there is, I think, a key difference. In new natural law theory, reason is used to examine nature and even human nature independently of revelation. It's not opposed to revelation, but revelation is not necessary. For the maqasid al-sharia, I mean, it's in the name, reason is used to examine the divine law with nature as an aid. So they are, even as they have such strong resemblances, they're both thinking about what are the things at which a moral or divine law aim. That key difference. Are you examining a sort of universal morality, or are you examining the divine law? I think this marks a key difference. Whether that disqualifies the maqasid approach to constitute a natural law, it's certainly a question I'm not going to attempt to settle here. What I will suggest, though, is that as far as I can tell, neither approach can surmount a problem tantamount to the Euthyphro dilemma, where, by way of recalling, in the Euthyphro, Socrates poses the question whether the gods loved what was pious because it was pious, which sets up the problem of an independent standard of piety beyond the gods, or whether something is pious because it was loved by the gods, which makes the gods capricious, loving something independent of any inherent value. Translated into Islamic terms, the question would be, is something good because God declares it good, or does God declare something good because it is somehow independently good? Neither option works, as the first option is sort of a voluntaristic God, in which case everything has to be by command and fiat. And the second is un-Islamic and violates God's sovereignty. There's something that is good beyond God. I don't see a perfect solution to this problem, but it also can't be ignored if we are discussing the possibility of a natural law tradition within Islam, or really any religion. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the discussion on fitra as a candidate for natural law, because both Frank Griffel, on whose analysis of Qutb and Maududi I'm relying quite heavily in the paper. And I myself ultimately find that fitra is it's only like natural law if one assumes the completeness and truth of Islamic revelation, which is by no means an unuseful tool or way of thinking, but I don't think it would really be a natural law in the sense that is usually termed. The term is usually used. Happy to discuss it in the Q&A, of course, and it appears in the larger paper. So finally, the sort of third field that I'm looking into for a tradition of natural law is natural law as teleology within Aristotelian philosophy as received within Islam, in the history of Islamic thought. So if Iman's rationalist approach to natural law places reason problematically above the Sharia, as Cinder argues that it does, and I tend to agree, and if the Islamist versions of natural law that Frank Griffel discusses, that I've referred to here, that rest on fitra, simply collapse Sharia and natural law, then what meaningful yet not theologically problematic path exists for natural law within Islam? I'm going to address this using what Rijke Sinders does see as Islamic natural law, which is essentially Aristotelian equity, epikaiya. Like natural law in the Thomistic understanding, and like Kamali's and others' version of istihsan, equity rectifies the positive law where positive law misses the mark of justice, right? But here, the positive law would actually be Sharia. It would be divine positive law. And there's perhaps some difficulty in seeing it in that way. Still, unlike Thomistic natural law, thinking of natural law as equity corrects it not according to an independent, rational, hierarchical natural law, but rather by aligning the application of, here, the Sharia, in other cases, the positive law, with the telos, the final cause or end of the very law it corrects, right? So this is not unlike the maqasid in that you are interpreting the law in a way, and istihsan, as Kamali sees it, in that you're interpreting the law in a way consonant with its ends, of course, sort of a spirit rather than letter of the law type of approach. Now, without wanting to adopt wholesale Cinder's equation of Aristotelian epikaiya with natural law, I'm not quite sure that that's entirely correct. Her instinct to locate natural law in teleology is, I think, a very good one. I've discussed this elsewhere, and it's probably beyond the confines of this paper, but I favor a notion of natural law articulated by Robert Sokolowski, natural law as, he says, the ontological priority of ends over human purposes. That is, the naturally given ends, the teloi, must take priority over what humans sort of set out to do as purposes. His illustration is medicine, right? You could have many purposes in practicing medicine, making money, gaining prestige, providing for a family, but they must always be, they must take second place to the true telos of medicine, which is the healing of bodies. So this definition of natural law has a number of advantages. It's not tied to any tradition, any religious tradition. So it ostensibly can be used across traditions. It avoids conflating natural law with convention, which I think some natural law enthusiasts perhaps want to do. And finally, it simultaneously makes use of this idea of a kind of moral intuition, which you'll see more in the larger paper, but Al-Jabar's concept of lutf, Said Qutb's idea of this sort of innate moral awareness. I think those are useful concepts, but it's very easy to rely on those as natural law when they might just be convention, right? So it's indisputable, in other words, that humans have moral intuitions, but those intuitions, to know that they are divinely moral, as some thinkers seem to assume, one would need more than the fact of the intuitions themselves. So that something more for Qutb and Jabar would be revelation, which is perfectly fine, but then this makes it a distinctly Islamic divine, or a distinctly Islamic natural law. And then we have the question of, like, is this natural if we are relying on revelation? For Sokolowski, and I think for Cinder, the something more is to examine the ends of something, right? We can have these moral intuitions, but do our moral intuitions lead us to respect the ends, the final causes of X, Y, or Z that we're attempting to do? So there are, of course, disadvantages to this approach. Discerning the end or the telos of something is by no means straightforward. Both our theoretical reasoning and practical reasonings are very flawed. Still, given the alternatives that Socrates outlines in the Euthyphro, finding a way to avoid both horns of this dilemma is imperative, particularly in a religious context in which the choice between the two horns may amount to one between fundamentalism on the one hand and irreligiosity on the other. Natural law, when understood less as a set of rules independent of revelation, as many strains of it do, and more as a means of understanding, of prioritizing the ends over purposes, of understanding both nature and revelation, I think can be an invaluable aid in avoiding those horns of the dilemma. I know I'm running quite close to time here, so I'll just point then, a gesture at the end here, to the merits of beginning with Ibn Rushd in attempting to build a theory of natural law within the Islamic tradition. I've written elsewhere about his writings, his Aristotelian writings on the Sunan al-Maktuba, the unwritten laws, which he links to nature, to Tabi'ah. And I think that we could read this as an inchoate version of natural law in the sense that I favor. But we needn't stop with Ibn Rushd himself. That would be to sort of preempt a longer standing tradition. One of the points that I had in writing this paper using contemporary sources is to show that this way of thinking, this way of both understanding nature itself and the divine law is something that has and certainly can continue to develop, has developed and can continue to develop within the Islamic tradition with other religious traditions as well, without falling into the traps of either sort of a secularizing external standard by which to measure the law on the one hand, or on the other hand, to sort of reduce revelation to a set of commands that are unquestioned. So thank you all. I'll end it here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Talieferro. Our third speaker is Dr. Tuna Tunagöz. He's assistant professor at the Department of Islamic Philosophy of Çukurova University. And his paper is the spirit of Nizamiye, or the new reality, the influence of Juhani and Al-Ghazali on Ebü'l-Berekat, el-Bağdadi metaphysics. The floor is yours. 20 minutes.
Sayın Başkan, değerli misafirler, kıymetli hocalarım, hürmetlerimi arz ediyorum. Günün bu saatinde bir ilim toplantısı için burada toplanan insanlara gerçekten içten bir biçimde teşekkür etmemiz lazım. Bugünkü konuşmamda Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi felsefesinin ruhunu özetlemeye çalışacağım. Ve bu düşünürün ne oldu da meşayilik eleştirmenine döndüğünü izah etme. Amacım bu. Elbette bunun Nizamiye süreçleriyle doğrudan ilgisi var. İzahın odak noktası biraz o olmaya çalışacak. Bunu göstermek için PDF'yi açabilirseniz. Şimdi gözüküyor değil mi? Ben gerçi çok net göremiyorum. Ben benim gösterdiğim yeri siz işaretlerseniz ben oradan bakayım, sorun olmaz. Sadece işaretlemeniz yeterli. Tamam, sıkıntı varsa orada da çözebiliriz.
Şu bilgisayarı.
Ben devam edeyim. Biri işaretleyelim. Gösterdiği kişileri işaretlemeniz yeterli olur. Yapabilir misiniz? Tamam. Ben şuraya oturayım. Orada hızlansın. Başladınız mı? Tamam, teşekkür ederim. Burada Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi'nin hocalarının listesi, yani ilim silsilesi burada yer alıyor. Bu Farabi'nin Kayıp fi Zuhuril Felasife eserine isnat ederek ilk önce oluşturuldu. Temel kaynağım da İbn Ebi Usaybiya'nın Uyunul Enba. Şimdi yukarıda ilk sırada Antakya Okulu'nun son filozofu. Bunlar meçhul şahıslar. Bunlar doğrudan doğrudan kim olduğu belli değil. Dediğim gibi Farabi'ye istinad ediyor. Fakat listeye bir bakarsak, işin uzmanları zaten bunu çözeceklerdir. Teşekkür ederim, sağ olun. Buradaki şahısların hemen hemen hepsi Bağdat ilim muhitinin meşayileri olduğu çok rahat bir görülecek ve şuradaki kişiye dikkat. Farabi, ilim silsilesi Farabi'ye uzanıyor. Yuhanda bin Haylan, Metta bin Yunus, İbnül Hammar, Ebu'l-Fereç İbnü Tayyib, ya Farabi'ye uzanan işin özeti aslında bir ilim silsilesi var. Dikkat edersek buradaki bütün şahıslar Bağdat'taki meşayiler. Şimdi bir meşayi eleştirmeninden bahsediyoruz. Ne oldu da bu kişi bir meşayi eleştirmenine dönüştü? Aradığımız şey bu aslında. Şimdi burada dikkat edersek şu hocası Said bin Hibetullah el-Bağdadi çok iyi bilinen bir figür değildir maalesef. İslam tıp tarihinin en büyük isimlerinden birisi. Birazdan şu özellikle İbn-i Tilmiz 4. sıradaki en büyük tabip öğrencilerinden birisi. Bağdadi'nin aynı zamanda çok büyük bir rakibi, hasmıdır. Hristiyan. Devrin bütün halifelerinin özel tabibi olarak da görev yapıyor. Şimdi Said bin Hübetullah, meşayi, teşbihte hata olmasın, işi şöyle özetleyeyim. Bağdatlı İbn Sina diyeceğimiz kadar meşayi. Tıpta önde, yine Müstahzir Billah'la Muktedi'nin özel hekimi. Çok özel eserleri var. Özellikle Makale fi Halkil İnsan, insanın biyolojisi, fizyolojisi, ruhu vesaire niçin yaratıldı? Daha doğrusu insan yaratılışının bilimsel açıklamasını ifade eden bir kitap. Son 17 faslı da ruh üzerine. Makale fil Hudud vel Furuku var. Felsefi temel eseri bu. Felsefi terimler sözlüğü. Kısaca öyle özetleyebilirim. Burada da meşayi görüşlerini özetliyor. Biz örneğin zaman, mekan, madde, suret, nübüvvet, meat hangi başlık olursa olsun İbn Sina paralelinde yorumlar görüyoruz. Bir tıp eserinin ismi Et-Telhis en-Nizami, Nizami Mülk'e ithaf edilmiş. Bunun Bursa'daki bir yazmasının zahriyesine giriş sayfasında fazlasıyla Mecusi'nin El-Kamilü Sınasından ve İbn Sina'nın kanunundan etkilendiği söyleniyor. Ve bu notu düşen kişi aslında bu sebeple tenkit ediyor. Bunu niçin anlatıyorum? İbn Sina ile bağlantıyı ortaya koyabilmek için anlatıyorum aslında. Devam edeyim ben. Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi kısaca böyle birisinin öğrencisi. Arka tarafta öğrencileri var. Büyütebilecek miyim? Şöyle biraz oynatarak belki yapmam lazım. Süheyl bin Aziz el-Müstevfi, Razi'nin hamisi. Dikkat edelim, bağlantıları kuracağız. Dahvar, Mühezzebüddin İbn-i Nakkaş, bunun öğrencileri Dahvar, bu Suriye tıbbının en önemli isimlerinden birisi. Orada isimler net bir biçimde gözüküyor. Daha çok tıpta olmak üzere önemli bir etkisi var. Burada şu Abdüllatif Bağdadi'nin babası, Yusuf bin Abdüllatif Bağdadi, Abdüllatif Bağdadi öğrencileri İbn Hallikan. Şöyle tek tek gideyim. Müciriddin el-Bağdadi, bura önemli. Bu Nizamiye'nin müderrisi, kelamcı. Zehebi'de yer alan Bilgi. Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi'den felsefeyi gizlice öğrendi. Buraya ben dikkat çekeceğim. Nizamiye müderrisinden bahsediyoruz. Bir Nizamiye müderrisi niçin felsefi ilimleri gizlice öğrenmek zorunda kalır? Seyfettin el-Amidi, öğrencisinin öğrencisi. İbn-i Yusufiye'ye bakalım. Şu Zahirüddin el-Farisi çok önemli bir şahıs. Bağdadi düşüncesini İran'a, sirayetinin gerisindeki kişi. Öğrencisine dikkat edelim. Sühreverdi el-Maktul. Şu Fahrettin el-Ahlati de Meraga'da rasathanesine Tusi'nin davet ettiği 5 astronomdan birisi. Şimdi Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi bu açıdan çok ilginç bir şahıs. Bu kadar da iyi bilindiğini düşünmüyorum. Eğer biz İslam düşünce tarihinde Atina okulu gibi bir tablo çizeceksek, keşke çizilse, onu söyleyebilirim. Ebü'l-Berekat el-Bağdadi önde gelen figürler arasında yer almaz. Şüphesiz. Orada Farabi, Gazali, İbn Sina'yı, Fahrettin Razi'yi merkeze almamız gerekir ama etkileri bakımından herhangi bir düşünür olmadığını söyleyeyim. Şimdi bu zihnimizde ana tabloyu canlandırmak için benim sunduğum bir şeydi. Şimdi geliyorum, sayfayı değiştiriyorum. Evet. Gazali etkisinin nüsha düzeyinde kanıtı. Şuraya dikkat edelim. Şuraya. Bu bir müstensihin notu. Esad Efendi 1931 nüshası. Bir şey anlatmış Bağdadi. Okuyacağım birazdan. Burada diyor ki Kel İmam Ebu Hamid el-Gazali radıyallahu anhu. Radıyallahu anhu genelde sahabe için kullanılan bir övgüdür. O da ilginç. Bir müstensihin. Yani Nüsab 742 tarihli Hicri. Muteber yazılışından 200 yıl sonra ortaya konmuş bir nüsha. Yani Bağdadi-Gazali bağlantısının çok eski tarihlerde bir kanıtı. Vakit kalırsa kalacağını da tahmin etmiyorum da bu nüshaya biraz değinim. İslam Altınorda devlet tarihi açısından Harizm ilim muhiti vesaire bunlara dair çok önemli veriler de barındırıyor. Şimdi burada Bağdadi diyor ki nüshada düşme var. Ben okuyacağım. فَنَقُولُ مَا قَالَهُ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْفُضَلَاءِ el-müteahhirin fiz zaman. Buradaki düşmeye dikkat edelim. El-müteahhirin fil marife haysu kal la huve illa huve. Bomba bir cümle. Vahdet-i vücutçu olduğuna dair yorumların temel kaynağı bu cümledir. Dikkat edelim burada ne diyor? Zaman olarak sonra gelenlerden ama marifet, bilgi bakımından önde gelenlerden birisi şöyle dedi. Müstensihimiz ne notu düşmüş? Gazali demiş. Şimdi bu zaten çok açıktır. Gazali, İslam düşünce tarihinin elbette en önemli figürlerinden birisi. Bağdadi düşüncesinin de belirleyicilerinden birisi. Bir hususu çok açık bir biçimde vurgulamam lazım. Bağdadi ne eş'aridir ne meşşai, bağımsız bir filozoftur. Nevi şahsına özgü bir tiptir. Herhangi bir ekol, ya karakter itibariyle herhangi bir şeye çok fazla bağımlı kalabilecek bir figür olduğunu sanmıyorum. Temel sebep de bu. Mesela örneği şuradan verebilirim. Bağdadi hem sudur teorisini eleştirir, hem hudus, zamansal hudusu eleştirir ve alemin ilahi iradeyle ezelde yaratıldığını söyler. Bildiğim kadarıyla yanlışım varsa dostlar düzeltebilir. İslam düşünce tarihindeki bu yöndeki ilk fikirdir. Yani bu ben ne İbn Sinacıyım ne Gazaliciyim demektir aynı zamanda. Etkiye odaklanıyoruz sadece. Ben filozofun bir Gazalici olduğunu söylemiyorum. Şimdi biz Bağdadi'yi nasıl anlayacağız? Ben bir yüzyıl geriye gitmemiz, aslında onun doğduğu zamana gitmemiz gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Bağdadi'nin doğumu Beyhaki'ye göre 454. Hocası Said bin Hübetullah'ın doğumu 436 Hicri. Gazali'nin doğumu iyi bilinir 450. Bunlar muasır kişiler aynı zamanda. Şimdi Gazali'den 14 yıl önce doğmuş bir düşünür. Meşşaihken bu İbn Sina'nın ölümünden 8 yıl sonra doğduğu anlamına gelir. Zaman geçtikçe niçin biz Gazali'ye yaklaşıyoruz? İşte bu Nizamiye ile ortaya çıkan bir şey. Tek sebep Nizamiye değil. Aslında bana göre açıklamaya çalışacağım. Nizamiye bir araz, cevher değil. İşin özü İslam toplumunun dini bir toplum oluşuyla alakalı. Bu tarihten beri böyleydi. Nizamiye o ruhu tekrardan canlandırdı. Eğer biz Me'mun'la birlikte nispeten ihtiyatla kullanmak lazım. Bir sekülerleşmeden bahsedeceksek Nizamiye tekrardan muhafazakarlaşmanın bir simgesine dönüşür. İspatları gelecek şöyle. Başka örnekler vermeye çalışacağım. Şuradan izah edeyim sanki daha kolay anlaşılır. Şu cümleyi kurduğum birisi, bunun kime ait olduğunu uzmanı birisi çok rahatlıkla anlayacaklardır. Filozoflar Allah'ın ilminin cüz'ileri kuşatmadığını söylediler. Verilecek tek cevap var. Pardon. Herkes bunun Gazali'ye ait olduğunu bilir. Bu cümlenin aynısı Muteber'de var. Baş eseri Muteber içerisinde var. Bu bir. Çok önemli bir etki. Biz biliyoruz ki İslam felsefesi uzmanları, filozofların böyle bir cümlesi yok. Bu Gazali'nin filozoflara atfettiği bir tefsir tabiri caizse. Yani şifanın içerisindeki bir izahın çok kötümser bir yorumudur şahsi kanaatim. Ama aynı cümle Muteber içerisinde var. Bağdadi sudur teorisini reddeder. Bağdadi zamansal hudusu da reddeder. Onu söylemiştim, oraya dikkat. Bağdadi'nin Tanrı için en uygun isim önerisi Nurul Envar'dır. Bunu kimin kullandığını gayet iyi biliyoruz. Mişkatül Envar kitabını çok rahat hatırlayacağız. Bir ek yapayım. Bunu ilk defa Gazali kullanmıyor. Esoloji Aristoteles'te geçiyor. Apokrif bir hermetik risalede geçiyor çok daha önce. İhvan-ı Sefa'nın Resailinde geçiyor. Yani bu hermetik bir terminoloji aslında. Yani bu Gazali'ye de sirayet etmiş durumda sadece. Akıl anlayışında akıl müstakil bir akıl risalesi vardır Bağdadi'nin. Kim için yazıldı? Nizamiye ruhunu anlatmaya çalışıyorum. Avnüddin İbn Hureyre. Bu Hanbeli bir alimdir ve devletin veziridir. Hem kelamcı hem yani genel fıkıhla iştigal eden birisi ve aynı zamanda vezir. Kaç yılları? 540'lar takriben. Muktefi-i Emrillah devrinde. Burada şimdi aynı dönemde Gazali'nin Tehafütünde felsefe eleştirisini unutmayalım. Şehristani'nin aynı zamanda Nizamiye müderrisi olduğunu unutmayalım. Bir felsefe eleştirisi orada var. 550'li yıllarda örneklerle ben dönemi tasvir etmeye çalışıyorum. 550'li yıllarda İbnül Mürahhim diye Bağdat kadısının çeşitli nedenlerle muhtemelen iftira yakalandığını, hapse atıldığını ve hapiste öldürüldüğünü biliyoruz. Ne olmuş İbnül Mürahhim'e? İtham şu, rüşvetçi bir kadıydı. Olabilir, yargısız infaz edilmiş, yakalanmış, dövülmüş. Bağdat'ta yakalanıyor. Evi Rahbe'de, Rahbe'deki evinde felsefe kitapları bulunuyor. İbn Sina'nın İşaratı, İhvan-ı Safa'nın Resaili, İbn Sina'nın Necatı. Dini kitaplarına dokunulmuyor. Felsefe kitapları Cuma namazının ardından bilinçli bir biçimde halkla toplanarak, sloganlar eşliğinde, kadıya lanet okunarak, bunu yaptıran halifeye övgüler içerisinde yakılıyor. Şimdi herkes devrinin çocuğudur. Ben de öyleyim. Türkiye'nin bugünkü şartlarından mutlak surette etkileniyorum. Yani doğru bulalım, yanlış bulalım. Herkes o yaşadığı çağın içerisindedir. Ben Bağdadi korkarak kelama yaklaştı demiyorum. Ama asrın ruhu kelam ruhu. Buna dikkat etmek gerekiyor. Ve bence asıl konu şu. İşin özü şurası. Biz İslam felsefesinin... Kaç dakikam var? How many minutes? Okay. İslam felsefesinin oluşumunda biz Süryanilere çok şey borçluyuz. Ama Süryaniler de felsefeyi Hristiyanlaştırıyor. Bunu hiç unutmayalım. Mesela yakın zamanlarda okuduğum çalışmalar var. Galen'in bir tıbbi formülü var. Bir merhem aslında. İsmi Barbaros Hera. Hera kim? Mitolojik kahraman, tanrıça, Zeus'un eşi. Bu neye dönüşmüş? Havariler merhemine. Hera merheminden havariler merhemine. Tanrılar diyor mesela Grekçe metin. Hristiyan Süryani neye çeviriyor? God, Tanrı. Orada mitolojik kahramanlar metin içerisinde geçiyor. Neye dönüşüyor? Havarilere. Ben bunu İshak bin Uney'nin Galen çevirisinde de gördüm. Bir formülü anlatırken mitolojik kavramları izah etmiyor, doğrudan formülü net bir biçimde veriyor. Yani Arapça içerisinde de yapıldı. Yani aslında felsefe başta Hristiyanlaştırıldı, daha sonra İslamileştirildi. İslam düşünce tarihi, felsefe tarihi bana göre tümüyle felsefe-din ilişkisi üzerinden okunabilir. Bu okumanın çok sağlıksız olacağını düşünmüyorum. Çünkü Orta Çağ'ın dini değerlerinin ve düşüncelerinin baskın olduğu bir dönemde İslam felsefesi ortaya çıktı ve hiçbir filozof bunun dışına çok fazla çıkabilme imkanına sahip değildi. Çıkanlara özür dilerim. Çıkanlara ne dediler? Kafir, zındık, mülhit. Bunu hiç unutmayalım. Nizamiye ben kötü bir süreçtir, yanlış bir süreçtir demiyorum. Başka bir şey. Kelamcı din tasavvuru başka bir çizgidir. Meşahidin tasavvuru başka bir çizgidir. Yani bunlar veya Sufi çizgi başka bir çizgidir. Bunların hepsi kendi içerisinde anlamlı, değerli, kıymetli. Ama Nizamiye süreci İslam düşüncesinin sonrası için tek başına değil, cevher olarak değil. Dikkat edelim. Dini değerler manzumesinin daha baskınlaşma süreci içerisinde sonraki yüzyıllarda biz bir filozofluk idamına tanık olacağız. Benzer baskı ortamları da ortaya çıkacak. Ben bu şekilde özetleyebilirim. Herkese saygılarımı arz ediyorum, hürmetlerimle.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all, the panelists, the wonderful panelists, and wonderfully on time. I'm really greatly appreciative. We will start soon the question and answer period, but before we do so, I would like to make an announcement. Right after the end of the panel, we will move to another room for the launch and discussion of Dr. Charles Butterworth Al-Farabi's Kitab al-Huruf. So I would like you all to join us there, please. So I think we have about 15-20 minutes for question and answer. Whoever, do we have someone with a microphone? Okay, here, Professor.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if Ms. Talieferro is still with us.
She is.
Yes?
She is, yes.
I can send her my question. Are you listening to me, Ms. Talieferro?
Can you hear us, Professor Talieferro? Yes, she can.
Yes?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for your insightful lecture. You said many extraordinary things, and I will just focus on this idea of istihsan. I understood quite well, I think, the function of istihsan as being something that rectifies or corrects the unfair situation. Do you think that al-istislah also could be taken in the area of natural law as al-istihsan?
Okay, I'm so sorry. I can hear Professor El-Reyes very well. The question, I know it was about istihsan, but Professor El-Reyes, would you be able to repeat the question for me, perhaps?
No, it's about al-istislah. You didn't speak about al-istislah. You spoke about al-istihsan. But do you think that al-istislah also, the interest of the community, can also be a part of natural law, al-istislah and not al-istihsan? No?
I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble hearing the question. Wasim, do you think you could repeat it for me? Because I can hear you very well.
We will, yeah.
Now do you hear me? No?
Now it's better.
It's better. So,
Yes.
I was just saying that you said many wonderful things about al-istihsan, and I was wondering if al-istislah, the interest of the community, is also a part of natural law.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yes, that shouldn't have been so difficult for me to understand. Yes, certainly. I think that it's the related concepts, right? That if you are thinking about the good, Hassan, of the community, you are also thinking about the benefit of the community. So I think if, for instance, Kamali's analysis of istihsan is correct, and I'm inclined to agree with him, but of course I'm not, one of the fuqaha. If that is correct, then you, of course, are also asking about istislah in ascertaining what I think we could fairly call natural law. Now, again, I made this point concerning the maqasid, but I think it holds with both istihsan and istislah. It might just be a semantic point. Are we talking about natural law if our primary purpose is interpreting the divine law? I'm fine with saying yes, I think we are. If this is an exercise in reason, right? And we are attempting to ascertain what is good for the community. Now we are using that exercise, which I think we could call natural law, in order to interpret the divine law, yes. But I think that that can certainly be natural law as sort of if natural law and divine law can be understood to sort of complement each other, then in short, yes, I think that can, certainly istislah holds as much, if not more, because it's a little bit less controversial, potential as istihsan, as a sort of natural law device. Did that answer the question?
Does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
Questions? Just 1 second, we are trying to get the question out. Yeah. Okay, we have another question. Sorry, we have another question, but we need a translator. So just 1 second, please.
أريد أن استفسار فحسب للأستاذ تنغز على العبارة التي وردت في عرضه هي لا هو إلا هو. هذه العبارة ابن رشد في كتاب تهافت يعزوها إلى أرباب الصوفية. فما رأيكم في هذا الانتساب العبارة لا هو إلا هو إلى أرباب الصوفية؟ شكرا.
Professor Lamrani asking you, Mr. Tuna Tunagöz, about the phrase لا هو إلا هو. Ibn Rushd put it in the part of Sufi tradition. What's your mind about it?
Teşekkür ederim. Bunu ya aslında onun tasavvuf tarihi içerisindeki aşamaları tek tek yani onu kendi açımdan ihata ettiğimi söyleyemem. Benim açımdan konu özünde şurası. Bağdadi'nin vahdet-i vücutçu eğilimleri var. Fakat ben buna vahdet-i vücut demiyorum. Çünkü vahdet-i vücut İbnül Arabi ile kurulduysa burada anakronizm yapmadan ondan öncekileri vahdet-i vücut olarak anmamamız gerekir. Şahsi kanaatim bu. Yahut bazı çalışmalarda Ebü'l-Berekat'ın işrakiliğinden bahsediliyor. Ben bunu da hatalı buluyorum. Yani bunlar anakronik terimler. Neyle izah edebiliriz? Bence fena. Cüneyd-i Bağdadi'de örneğin olduğu gibi fena teorisinden gidebiliriz. Yalnız burada sadece benim odaklandığım nokta Bağdadi-Gazali ilişkisiydi. Bağdadi bunun bir paragraf ilerisinde mevcudatın hakiki olduğuna dair ifadeler de kullanıyor. Yani onun için zaten vahdet-i vücutçudur ben demiyorum. Fakat buna dair yorum, mesela Shlomo Pines vahdet-i vücut emareleridir bu diye yorumladı. Ben katılmıyorum. Buna katılmayan birkaç yazar da biliyorum. Şahsi sadece münferit bir görüş olarak da yani sunulmadı. Onları ifade etmek isterim saygılarımla.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. My question will be to Mr. Joseph Lumbard. Are you hearing us?
Yes.
Beautiful. I just wanted to
Yes,
thank
I'm
you.
here.
Very beautiful. I just wanted to thank you for your beautiful presentation. My question is not necessarily related to the topic that was discussed today, but It's about Ghazali's views on Wahdat al-Wujud and his interconnectedness of his understanding of Sufism and concepts such as Fana, ila akhiri. What do you think Ghazali thought about Wahdat al-Wujud, and what was his views concerning that? If that's possible. Thanks.
That's a good question. I mean, you know, in the Mishkat, al-Ghazali quotes the famous saying of Ma'ruf al-Qarhi, "Ma fi al-wujud illa Allah," and I think that there's, you know, definitely he doesn't fully develop something that we would call necessarily Wahdat al-Wujud in the same way, but in the Mishkat, he definitely develops a oneness of Nur, which I think we could say definitely is part of what influenced the development in Suhrawardi. And so I think that in terms of whatever it is that you call the ultimate ontological reality of the first principle, that Abu Hamid al-Ghazali definitely sees that this reality is necessarily the reality that joins together all other realities, and has a very Neoplatonic perspective in that way, that all things are ultimately not only connected through a chain of causation, but are actually connected through an ontological chain. But like as with the school of Ibn Arabi and others, he is very careful to maintain that distinction, that these are, as he says, the lower lights, and that they derive their light, as he says in the Mishkat, that they derive their light from the higher lights, all of which derive their light from the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think that there is definitely an argument to make that in many ways what we would later call Wahdat al-Wujud is prefigured in some ways in the thought of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, but then again, I think we could also say that it's prefigured in Ma'ruf al-Qarhi, and there are certainly places in the Ihya where this is also alluded to, such as parts of the Ajab al-Qulub, book 20. So I think that it's definitely there. And also when Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is talking about certain modes of consciousness or of knowledge, that when he's talking about the highest levels of knowledge, which for him is al-ilm al-laduni or ilm al-huduri or kashf, that there is a oneness of witnessing as well. So you could see both a wahdat al-shuhud and a wahdat al-wujud within the thought of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, though of course not as fully developed as one would find it in the works of al-Qaysari or al-Qunawi and others.
Thank you. We have one more question? Yes, please.
Dr. Talieferro. Can you hear me, Karen? This is Terry.
Yes, hi Terry.
Yes, good to see you.
It's good to hear your voice.
Just one question to help me understand this Euthyphro problem, which I think comes up all the time in Islamic theology, philosophy. So I know you're a parent, and I know you try to do the best for your children. And surely the only quality that you want to represent to them is not simply that you have sovereignty in the sense of power, but that you're willing to withdraw your power in order to allow them to make decisions on their own, with the risk that they may make bad decisions. So I wonder why the question I have is, why are we so attracted to the notion of sovereignty only as control and power, which seems to me where you end up if we think of only control as the as the quality of a king or a ruler or someone in authority. And is the Euthyphro trying to speak to that and saying, no, you admire something, you love something, you love a ruler who is also good rather than always being controlling?
I'm wondering if I'm understanding you correctly, because it seems to me that the dilemma is only a dilemma as it concerns God, or, as it were for Socrates, the gods. Because I, as a parent, and I would hope, for rulers as well, I would always opt for the horn of the dilemma that says, I love what is good, and I'm telling you, my children, to do what is good, because it is actually good. It is not good because I'm telling you it's good, right? It's not good because I've decided it is, right? But that it only becomes a problem with God, because if God, to take Anselm's formulation is, to butcher Anselm's formulation is the thing that is higher than all things, right? That higher than which nothing could be, really, than could be imagined. So if there's some standard that precedes God, and God only loves what is good because it is good, right? That's where the problem comes in then, because, well, okay, how is it good if it isn't because God declares it good in some way? I know that's not an answer to your question, but am I addressing the issue so far?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sure we would need to continue, but I think your paper is very much on a very important topic, and I wanted to encourage you just to persist in that. And
thank you. Yeah,
okay.
As I wrote in the paper, I don't think it's solvable, right? It's a dilemma for a reason, but in thinking about, rather than framing it in terms of this dilemma, framing it in terms of, well, right, God created all things, that you could stipulate for an Islamic natural law, right? God created all things, but then in that creation itself is goodness. Now, it's good because it comes from God, the source of all things. Like, there's nothing of God that isn't good, and therefore that which is creation is good. It's not so much a question of a sort of voluntaristic declaration of goodness, but because its substance ontologically must necessarily be good. And so then we start thinking about the telos of that object or of that entity, and that is what leads us along sort of a truly moral path, rather than did God declare this, though the two would necessarily be in harmony, logically at least.
right, and so my appeal to the common sense of a parent should make us less afraid of thinking through the issue presented by the Euthyphro and also by major thinkers in the Islamic tradition.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Oh, that's helpful for thinking about it. Thank you. So good to see you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we conclude the session? Okay, before I thank the panelists, I want to make another announcement. There was miscommunication, I think, about when the Professor Butterworth's event. It's not immediately after this session. It's going to be after the next session. So please do not forget about, after the break, we have to come back to this room for our next session. So yeah, please join me in thanking all our wonderful panelists and a wonderful panel. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for allowing us to participate online.
Absolutely.
Very
Yes,
sorry
thank
that I
you.
couldn't attend in person.
Yeah, likewise, very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you all. Take care.
Right.
Saygıdeğer hocalarımıza bizler de çok teşekkür ediyoruz değerli katkıları için. Programa ara vereceğiz. Bir sonraki oturum 11'de başlayacaktır.